We have several here tonight. This is their first time, so we're going to give them the same initiation that we gave you all last week.
I'm not going through that again.
Good to see Faye with us tonight. Good to see Paulette with us tonight. And thank you for coming out on this nasty night. At least the rain stopped for right now. I wanted to start tonight with a word of prayer, okay, and to share some prayer requests with you, if you would. Continue to remember these people in your prayers at home. Ray is home from the hospital after having surgery in his stomach, but he's not doing really well, and he's still got some bleeding and stuff. So please continue to remember Ray, if you would. Rose had surgery yesterday, took out part of her kidney, and at least part of it. I'm not sure if they took the whole thing or not, but she came home late this afternoon. Seems to be doing well. Rusty is not well mentally. But he's here tonight, but he's on my prayer list anyhow. Robert Sparrow needs your prayers. There's a possibility he may need to go on dialysis pretty soon. Trisha's still having a lot of stomach problems and difficulties and stuff, and really frustrated with the doctors, especially. They told her it was food poisoning. She doesn't believe it. Grandma doesn't believe it. So please remember them. Judy's brother, Michael Hubbard, is battling cancer. Please remember him as well. And Bill Edwards hurt his back somewhere along the line. I haven't been able to get in touch with him. I tried again tonight, but haven't been able to get in touch with him and see how he's doing. But please remember these needs as you were.
One other thing is my nephew in Washington State is battling cancer, and they've given him and said if he's fortunate, he might still be living at Christmas, but they doubt it. That's what the doctors told me. His name is Larry. Larry Wood.
George has to go to the doctors tomorrow about his leg. He said,
My body.
Every part of it, huh?
right. He went up and he for tests, so tomorrow this is tell him what they're going to do.
They told me if I got rid of this one chain, to talk about.
Oh my goodness. I wonder what Bob.
Maybe you should put him on the prayer list. Should be on house.
Maybe we need to pray harder for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, it's just me. This little guy over here keeps whispering in my ear.
And do remember Clyde Royals, his knees. He can hardly walk sometimes, so,
Rusty's brother. So
yeah,
remember that.
not lost.
Alice, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Father, we have right now,
Yes.
so we just praise your name for who you are, what you're doing in our lives, and touching bodies, and we thank you for touching us and touching others, Lord, and we especially ask you to be with Ernest's nephew, touch him, and especially with Ray and Patricia, Lord, and the others that are sick, Jude's brother. And Lord, we just ask you to be with that nation tonight.
Yes.
It's in such turmoil and so much hatred, still hatred. I wish that people would stop the hating and turn to loving each other and sharing with each other and sharing the problems, and just help us to remain true and faithful to you. Help us to be just what you would have us to be. We thank you for each and every one here tonight. Thank you for, again, for who you are. And just keep us on a firm line. Help us be witnesses for you, and help us to see Jesus living in us. Help us through this Bible study tonight, and just help us to learn more and more, because we know the time is drawing near.
Yes.
The way things are now, Lord, and people just don't believe it. But we just believe the time is near. Help us to be ready. Thank you again. Be with thee. Continue to go further. In Jesus' name.
Tell me some of the gadgets you have in your home or in your possession that help you tell time.
I think
Your phone,
Alexa.
Alexa.
Let's say go.
we just had
It's a different day and age, isn't it? I remember the day you had to wind up your watch every day. Or Any others? I walk out in our kitchen, and our coffee pot has the time on it, our oven has the time on it, our microwave has the time on it. You know, so if the lights blink, you got to go back around and read it, set every one of those.
We got two line clocks we got to restore. As soon as you plug them in, it automatically collects the time and it's always on time.
It goes to the right time? Wow.
I have one, my husband doesn't.
I have a little digital clock up in my office, and every time the power goes off, you got to go back and reset it. And when you unplug it, turn it in, it goes to 12 o'clock. But the button on it is broke for moving the time. So I set my time on my cell phone for 2 minutes to 12 o'clock, and I unplug that phone and plug it back in when it was. So if you're ever up in my office and the clock is off, that's why. Okay? Why do you have your devices located where they are?
I know I can find them.
Convenience.
Okay.
To notify me when lunchtime is.
That's good.
I know, Jerry. I think you're kind of like my brother. I was talking about him today. He gets up and has breakfast and goes and takes a nap. Then he gets up and goes and has lunch and goes and takes a nap. Then he has supper and then he goes and takes a nap and then he goes to bed.
That's not boring after a while.
Let's see, I need a couple of volunteers. Mr. Satter, would you come on up here? Face that wall, if you would, please.
Which one?
That wall.
I don't turn off.
That wall's fine.
I don't turn off.
I'll stay away from you. I need a timekeeper, somebody who has a watch with a second hand on it or something. Anybody got one? Nancy, you got one? When I say go, I want you to just tell me when 30 seconds are up. Jerry, I want you to figure out how close you can come to where 30 seconds is. Okay, but you're not allowed to count. You're not allowed to look at your watch. You're not allowed to stand there and go 1,001, 1,002. In fact, y'all are supposed to talk to him while we're timing him to see how close he can get to what 30 seconds really is. Okay, so you're not allowed to count. So don't do it. Don't cheat. Okay, because you won't make it to heaven if you cheat. Okay, you don't want to miss heaven over this. You just tell us when you believe 30 seconds are up. Okay, I'm going to say go, and you tell me when you believe 30 seconds are up. Okay, ready, set, go. Once upon a time, there were 3 bears, and each and every one of those bears went into the woods and did their, no, I was going to say did their business. Somebody help me out here with him to distract him so he can tell, he won't be able to tell when 30 seconds is up. You're not counting,
What
are
time
you?
is it?
You're not counting, are you? Okay.
What'd you eat today, Jerry?
What did he eat today?
Yeah.
How many times did he eat today? Many times. Doing okay there?
I guess.
You haven't passed out yet. Tell us when 30 seconds is up. Thank you very much. How close was he?
Just a little bit over 30.
Just a little bit. Okay, you did pretty
How
well.
much over?
You did fairly well.
About 3 seconds.
How difficult is it to judge time?
It depends on what's happening and what you're timing.
Okay?
If you're sitting there waiting for time to go to bed, it's almost impossible. The clock very seldom moves.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was in high school, the English teacher used to say if she had time left at the end of the period, she'd have us stand up and said, when you think a minute is up, sit down. So I was counting my pulse. She didn't say I couldn't do that. And she said, how'd you know? I said, well, I was counting my pulse, supposed to be 72 a minute. I was the closest one.
Well, what do you do when your pulse goes down to 36? It's a long minute then.
Time changes.
Isn't that what it was, Rusty?
Because when I was a child, it seemed like time just dragged all the time. Okay, every milestone, I didn't think I'd ever live long enough to get my driver's license, every one of those milestones. But now, it's like Christmas.
Yeah.
But at time, and I know this is kind of, somebody told me one time, and I'm like, I probably shouldn't share it in here, but it's like a roll of toilet paper. The closer to the end you get, the faster it goes. I mean, you think about it. I know that sounds kind of bad, but it is. You know, you look and it's like, oh, that's plenty of toilet paper. Well, and then all of a sudden it's
empty.
It's gone. And I'm like, gosh, that was the best analogy I've probably ever gotten of adult time. Because adult time and time when I was a child was two different things.
Oh, yeah.
That's better than Forrest Gump,
Yeah.
We're going to look at two different kinds of time tonight. If you read your chapter, you already know this, but we're going to go through it anyhow, okay? And I believe there are several different kinds of time besides what we're looking at. But we're going to look at, first of all, cyclical time, okay? Which means what?
The cycle of time over a
Life goes in a cycle, okay? Time is repetitive. And those who believe in this type of time, and I'm not going to say which one, okay, we'll get to that in a few minutes here, believe that time never ends. We just keep going and doing the same thing over again, and it repeats itself, okay? It's an unending cycle. If you were to draw it, it would look like this. And it just keeps on going and going and going and going. Hopefully we learn from what we've been through, but I don't see us there already. I mean, there have been wars since forever, and we're still having wars and fights and everything else, you know. It's unescapable, it's unchangeable. We can't do anything about it because it's going to happen again. Okay? The second kind of time that we look at is called linear time. Okay? Which means time is like this. Going somewhere, and those who believe in linear time believe that time moves forward towards something. And we as Christians believe a final end, okay? Meaning that linear time means God created time at a certain point, because God is outside of time, and don't ask me to explain that one, okay? But God is outside of time, and at a certain point, how do you say that? At a certain point in time, God created time. He wasn't in time, so He created time, and at some point, that time will end. We believe that as Christians, folks. We believe we're headed somewhere, and even though I believe some of what we go through is cyclical, and we do go through the same things again and again, and hopefully we learn from it so the next time through it is better, we're still in that linear phase there, and we're going somewhere. If you was a wholehearted believer in either one of these, okay, you can be what you want, okay? But if you only believed in cyclical time, that it just repeats itself over and over and over and over and over, how would that affect your everyday life?
Might be a little hopeless.
There's a good word, hopeless, because it's going to happen again no matter what you do. Whatever it is, you know, whatever it is. Anybody else? How would linear time affect your daily life?
You keep on going thinking there's something more in the future.
Okay.
Or you would think, I'm at this point in time, and I don't know what's down there, I don't know if I want to go down there or not.
Well, sometimes you can't wait to get to whatever is at the
Yeah.
end. You want to hurry up
And
and
some,
do something.
and the opposite is true too. Sometimes we can't wait to get there, but sometimes we say, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
You know?
Either way. I not want to go.
Let's go right down the middle here. Okay? Y'all folks on this side, you are proponents of cyclical time. You're a die-hard cyclical time. I want you to come up with, if you got a piece of paper or whatever, just write it on your mind or whatever, some kind of cliche or phrase or something that would describe your belief. Okay? You guys are the opposite. You're linear time people. Okay? If you're on this side. And I want you to come up with a presentation, if you want. You don't have to get up here and present it or anything, but tell me some of the elements of what your belief is about. You understand what I'm trying to get out here? You guys over here. Everything that goes around comes around. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Make something up, okay? I'll give you 2 minutes. Got plenty of time to do that.
Well,
What's your major proponent? Wait till we're ready here. What's your major proponent or proposal or belief of linear time? What does it mean to you? And what is important in that to you? You think you're just going to come here and sit? Forget it. You got to think. And if you don't think, I'm going to pick on you. No. Anybody who's ever been in my Sunday school class knows I never pick on anybody. Everybody know what I'm trying to get you to think about. Okay? I'm not saying this too well. I've already shared some of the ideas with you, but
I've been asked something.
It's kind of boring. It's like day in, day out. They go to work, come home, you eat, go to bed, get up in the morning, go to work.
how many people do that?
That's my life.
A lot of people do that. It's the exact same thing. And you know exactly what time you're going to get home from work, go to work, what you're going to do at work, etc., etc. You know, when I worked in steel mill, I worked in steel mill for 10 years. The only thing that changed the monotony of it was we rolled different kinds of steel on certain days, but it was the same thing. Push this lever, it moves the slab there. Push that lever, it moves it over there. You know, and quite frankly, I fell asleep standing up a couple times at work. And I'm moving hot steel across what's called a hotbed, and all of a sudden the microphone would come on and say, "Somebody wake that guy up!" Or I ran all the steel off of the hotbed onto the floor, you know, standing up, working 12 days. It was the same job over and over and over. Okay, it could get boring. Okay, somebody else on this side. 2 minutes are up because I'm timing it.
What about reincarnation?
There it is. Don't you think reincarnation comes from that? You know, I'm here now, and if I do good, I'll come back the next cycle better than I was in this one. Big proponent of that. Very good. Very good. Okay? Somebody else? Come on, use them brains. Anything else? We've had wars before, so we're always going to have wars. There's no sense in even bothering trying to have a peace treaty. That's what they believe.
Someone's going to break it in.
Rusty?
Somebody's going to break the treaty in.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Like we never learn.
What if we never learn? Yeah. Should we learn if we go through cycles?
We should.
You should. But how many people do we know that keep doing the same thing over and over and over again? You know? How many repeat offenders are in jail now? How many, you know?
Not many, because they're letting them all out.
Oh, yeah.
Good going.
How about this statement? Events may repeat themselves, but we may not recognize them in a new form. How about this one? Everyone has many chances to become a Christian, but each opportunity comes in different ways. How many people do you know, and as a pastor, I have been down that road, I've got plenty of time. Tomorrow will come. I'll have another opportunity to go to the altar. I'll be in church again. I'll be this, I'll be that. And, you know, that affects, if you're a strong believer in cyclical time, that affects whether or not you put off getting saved. All right, linear time, over here. Share a little bit with me what you're thinking.
Well, I think on the linear time, I've been at this point now, and I'm not going to be there again because everything's going this way, not backwards.
Okay.
And so whatever happened before won't happen again. It'll be all new.
Could things happen again, though?
Well, similar things could happen, but it would be in that line going toward that final point down there.
Okay.
Straight line.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the book where it talks about a final point, because I think, you know, with God, it's eternal. It's an alpha, omega kind of thing. You know, so it doesn't have a final.
Alluding to was there is a final point of what this life will be like.
Oh,
We'll have a new life
This life,
that will
yeah.
be different than this one.
Yeah,
But
okay, got it.
Well, even God said that he's gonna put an end to everything sometime,
okay.
somewhere.
What if you're a strong believer in the linear thing, okay, and we're talking about eternity, etc., Well, time will end someday, and that will be eternity.
Sir.
This time, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, the eternity is eternity.
Yeah, we won't worry about time anymore.
No,
You know, we won't have to have our alarm clocks. We won't have your Alexa or cell phone or anything else. Okay.
Well, with your linear time, your arrow's doing a good job because you shoot for a better life. You're looking out, looking forward for better things.
That's right.
You don't get a negative attitude. You keep working to make things better as your life goes on. So when you retire, then that shoots you down because when you retire, might as well back up.
Why do they have the steering wheel facing the front of the car?
So you won't go backwards.
Because 99% of the time you're going forward.
Of course, now they got cameras in there that if you want to back up, just look down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that.
How about this statement? Progress builds on the past. Humankind only had to discover wheels and fire once. We watch Daniel Boone pretty often, watch him make a campfire. And he gets down with his splint and goes, full fire!
Somebody else did that.
I mean, we're still discovering stuff, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
We're going to Mars.
Yeah.
Who knows what's there?
No wonder about that.
You think there might be life there? We're going to talk about that someday.
It's got water there.
I know some people that like to
Send to Mars. How about this statement? And pretend you're not a Christian. If a person does not become a Christian in his or her lifetime, it's too late. There's no chance in another life.
Then you'd have to be cyclical, which then
You'd have to go back to here to believe that you have another chance.
You're gonna keep coming back as something.
Okay? So,
A lot of times they, what was you, and I see it on Facebook, it's fun to play, but they say, what was you back in your early days? And of course, one of the things I was a doctor. And of course, I put on there, of course, Doc Holliday.
That is a good rule of thought.
how we interpret time, and I think this is what we're trying to get across, folks, is so important to how we live our lives. What we do tomorrow. If you believe it's going to be the same old thing over and over again, are you going to put your all into it? Are you going to get hopeless? The word was brought up a while ago.
So Dave, I grew up on a dairy farm, and it was cyclical time. Because every morning at 4 o'clock you got up to go milk cows. Every day at 4 o'clock you had to be back to milk cows again. Next morning you had to be there at 4 o'clock to milk cows. And it was a continually.
Imagine how them cows felt.
Huh?
So isn't part of our lives cyclical? It's not totally bad. And part of it negative.
I don't think it's our life, it's our, what we choose as a profession, which makes it cyclical, because, like, being a farmer, you have to do these things over and over again. Even though you do them over and over again, you still might have the, on the linear time, because you know that you do these things over and over again, you can make them better.
All right, let me play devil's advocate. No matter what you do in life, there's 24 hours in a day. And you can't just go to bed and stay in bed for a week. I mean, I know some people might, but, you know.
If you're sick enough, you will.
Yeah. So, anyhow. I want to move on here. How can God hear the prayer, and this is kind of a different vein here. How can God hear the prayer of a jet pilot about ready to crash? At the same time, the little girl's, now I lay me down to sleep, is being prayed.
Because he's God.
Don't give me that pat answer.
Well, as a Jenna pilot, God doesn't hear his prayer if he's not a Christian, unless it's a prayer of repentance.
Okay.
I think he hears his prayer anyway, but doesn't. He listens to all prayer, I believe. He knows if you're sincere,
Okay.
but he's omnipresent. He's everywhere.
Okay.
Well, what was that
And?
Highlight praying for? Was he asking God to help him, or what?
Probably praying for parachute.
Well, if he was asking, and I imagine he was.
Y'all listen to the point though, okay? How can God hear both at the same time?
Because
I can't listen to the TV at the same time my wife is talking to me.
But you're being
Y'all look at me weird, y'all in the same boat. And
Does he already know? I said, does he already know?
yeah, he's all knowing.
I mean, and our lives are, I mean, it says that they're planned for us before we're even one day old. Our lives are planned, so.
What was that about the little girl that said the prayer with it now? What
She's saying her bedtime prayers, now I lay me down to sleep, that's all. You know. But how can God hear both of them at the same time and pay attention to both of them at the same time? And don't sit there and say because he's God. Tell me why, because he's God, he can hear 2 people or 8 billion people on this planet.
He's all knowing and all powerful.
That's what it said.
And that's the same thing, because he's God.
That's right. What was he gonna say?
Because he has no time. There's no time.
One day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day. What does that mean to you? It means God's, every day that we live is 1,000 years for God. Is God keeping a 1,000-year track of that? That's just a simile that says time doesn't matter to God. We have a hard time, I do, maybe you don't, okay, but I do have a hard time fathoming that God lives outside of time, because we've lived with it our whole lives. You know, we're born, we go through things, we die, that's it. You know, our time is up. And how many times during the day you say the word time even? You know? It's such a part of our fabric and who we are. But God is outside of time, so they're speaking and praying at the same time, but that doesn't mean a thing to God, because God can hear both of them. And I'm glad for that. I'm glad he can hear me praying over my office, same time he can hear me praying over at the house. You know, and you at work or school or wherever you are. Because God doesn't care about time. And maybe those are the wrong word, doesn't care about time, but you know what I mean.
Paragraph in here says, time is a deep subject for humans to contemplate. We are bound within the time thing. That is, there are no definite limits to what you can comprehend. God, however, is infinite. He understands everything perfectly. Our inability to think of time as he does in no way limits his actions.
Doesn't that blow you away?
Yes.
That God, you know, we let him, and I'll go ahead and say it, we've let God become so mundane, I guess, instead of in awe of how awesome he really is. I mean, everybody in this room probably knows that he's omnipotent and omnipresent and on and on and on we could go. But how, you know, do we really let that affect our daily living?
It won't affect our daily living until we really realize, well, that's a marvelous thing that God can do. You know, man can't do that. And we don't have the ability to do that. But God can do all those things.
Yes, because we humans exist.
I want to read an illustration for you, okay? Then we're going to ask you to turn in the Bible for a couple of scriptures here, if you would. A novelist is sitting down writing a book, okay? And he's writing away on his typewriter, and it goes like this. There was a knock at the door. Joe moved toward the door to answer it. And he stops there because somebody interrupts him and he goes away and he doesn't come back for a couple days. The next sentence, though, reveals who's at the door. Are you getting my picture? When he comes back to the story, he writes and reveals who is at the door. And when we read the book, the author wrote, there's a knock at the door, and Joe moved toward the door to answer it. When he opened the door, there stood Sally. But there was a whole day's time between the knock at the door and the time that he opened the door. It's kind of like that with us and God. We experience successive events in time, but that doesn't bind God's actions. God created time for us, not for himself. You were born. You will die. Sorry. In your lifetime, you will experience joy. You will experience sorrow.
Work.
You will experience work.
Sadness.
You will experience play. Okay, we'll go that way since Roy brought it up. When we are going through that, we are in this box, and we see this box, and that box only most of the time. And I understand we can have joy and have sorrow at the same time, but when we're going through it, because we're in time, we're in that. But God sees the whole thing. And he knows the whole thing. I understand that. It doesn't mean we don't have any choices to go from this box to that box to that box. God's so awesome that he knows what's going to happen, but he didn't force it to happen. He still gives us the choice to make it, as was alluded to a few minutes ago. We have sorrow, we have joy, we have smooth times, we have rough times, and sometimes we only see what's in that box. But God doesn't. Aren't you glad for that? Aren't you glad, Alice, at 15, 18, whatever years ago it was, when you was laying in the hospital and they were poking holes in the side of your head? God said, I got this. And you were laying in there, and I know Jerry was, what are we going to do? What am I going to do without her? Because he loves you so much. And when we go through all these things in life, God says, I see the big picture, because I'm outside of time. Let's go to Ecclesiastes Chapter 3. If you have a Bible, please turn there. And most of you are familiar with this. You got to be. If you're not, sometimes when we're in this box, these boxes up here, we think that's the only reality there is. Have you ever been there in your life in a place and you think, man, this is never going to change? I'm never going to get better. We can't even look out the box, because we're stuck in it. But God views all the boxes at the same time. And I think this passage of Scripture kind of alludes to that. Anybody want to volunteer to read for us the first 11 verses or so? Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 through 11. Somebody with a big mouth.
Everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance.
Boxes.
A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace.
Keep going, Peter. Read 9, 10, 11. And pay attention to these three verses, folks. We get caught up in those, a time to this, a time to that. Do everything, turn. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
What profit has a worker from that in which he labors? I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts. And except that, no one can find out the work that God does from the beginning to the end.
Wow. He hath put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. We're stuck in these boxes sometimes, folks, and that's all we see. And we've got to remember that God's outside the box. You know, we talk about that. We think outside the box, blah, blah, blah. I want to put 2 words up on the board, and we're going to look more at them next week, so we won't go into it, but no, I'm not spelling right. Anybody know what that word means? Sandra?
It's
From
beyond time.
time to time.
It's something that is beyond time.
Beyond not just time, but everything. Okay? And there are those who believe that God is transcendent. He is so great and so awesome that He is way far up there. And He started everything in motion and He just lets it go, and He has nothing to do with the world now. No. That's how He is. He's transcendent. He's above. And can we I'll put the word in front of it, radical, okay? If you want to go really radical, a transcendent person. God just created everything. Now He's just sitting back on His throne and you're on your own. We don't believe that as Christians. I don't believe that as a Christian. Maybe you do.
Well, why would we pray to him if we believe that?
The other side of the coin is immanence. Meaning God is involved in everything. You stubbed your toe this morning. God did that. You sneezed. God did that. And God is here. And He is here. I believe He's here. He's omnipresent, so He's everywhere. Okay? But He's so involved in our day-to-day life that He orders everything. Every red light that you get from here to Newport News, He ordered it, and on and on and on.
He made you go through it too, huh?
You what?
He made you go through that.
I didn't go through no red lights today. One yellow light, that's all.
He gives us a mind to think on our own, so I don't think He has to tell us when to stub our toe or this or
I hear a lot about that though, because, I don't know, people say, well, why did God do that to me? Why did God do that to this one? Why did God do it?
Where do we come in the decisions we make to do what we do? You know?
He gives us a choice. He gives us a choice all the time, whether to follow Him or reject Him.
My brother always says, man, I have such bad luck. I have such bad luck. And I told my kids, I said, we make our luck sometimes. Like, not everything that, some things just come to us, but some things are because of the decisions we've made are why we're where we're at, And I really believe that, that, yes, God's involved, but sometimes, like, the reason we're where we're at is because we chose to do these things,
How do those two schools of belief affect how we live our lives? If you believe that God is radically transcendent, He's up there and He doesn't care about my life. I was born and someday I'm going to die. And, how would that affect your life? Wouldn't you just go and live your life any way you wanted to?
No, if you think there's no consequences, He's done with me.
Yeah.
He created me, He creates where I live.
But how many of you believe God is all-powerful? And He could do that. He could just create everything and just sit back and let everything go. I mean, He's created great. I'm still amazed how the sun comes up every morning. We revolve around the sun, and the moon revolves around our planet. But I don't understand. I wasn't big into astronomy and all that stuff. But I'm still amazed at that. Now, stars are up in the sky. How do they stay up there? And they're billions and billions of miles of light years away. Whatever it would take you, how many, 1,000 years for the light from that star to get here, and yet I see it every night. And the imminent part.
One day, Nancy and I were traveling up around Washington, D.C., and we were going around 495, and all of a sudden I looked up and the C-5A was coming in for a landing. or that's one of the biggest planes that they had at the time. And that was tremendous. And you wonder how something that big can stay up in that air and not just crash into the ground.
Well, if we believe in cyclical time, we'll believe that someone will invent aviation again. Why did it take us, 6,000 years to figure out how to fly? We don't have to invent it again. Two very different interpretations of time. These two. And two very different interpretations of who God is in time. Did God just set it up there and you got your clock, go ahead? Or is he down here every second, involved in every second of our lives? It should affect how we live. It should affect how we die. And this one obviously does affect how many people die. If you believe, as Bill said, in reincarnation and coming back, I'm going to do the best I can possibly do now, so when I come back next time, I won't be a cow. And I'm not making fun of it. It's a bad belief, folks. It's just wrong. I guess what we need to learn from this chapter is not how we view time, but how does God view time. That's more important. And I know we're not God, so we can't fully understand how God views time, but we know that he's outside of it. But he didn't just wind it up and let it go either. Jesus said, I don't know when God's going to call us home. Even Jesus said that. I've often wondered about that, the relationship between the Father and the Son. They were so close. Jesus, how many times, read through the book of John even, where Jesus said it over and over and over, I and the Father are one. I and the Father are one. If you see me, you see the Father. And if you see the Father, you see me. How could Jesus then say, I don't know what time God's going to call time?
Well, Dave, it's just like my dad and I. Everybody said if they saw me, they saw my dad, and or vice versa, because I look so much like him. And I think in that case, I had my life and my father had his life, even though we looked so much alike. And I think the same way with God. God is with us, and he's there for us. All we have to do is call on him.
Sure.
But God doesn't force himself on anybody, does he?
No. Let's go to Matthew chapter 24. Okay? And I know some of you really anticipate talking about end times, and we will get specifically to those kinds of things. But this is all groundwork for all of that. Matthew chapter 24 is one of those great passages about end times. Okay? Listen to what Matthew, one of Jesus' disciples, wrote about time, if you would. He's quoting Jesus, obviously. Matthew 24, verse 36. Anybody want to read for us? And you can read a verse or two if you want, and then say pass, and somebody else pick it up. But anybody want to? Matthew 24, verse 36, and I'll stop you at verse 44.
But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also were the coming of the Son of Man to be. For as in the day before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be.
Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and the other left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. And know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect.
Do you see any examples? There are. Give me some examples from that scripture of cyclical time. Okay?
That's it.
That's it. They're going through the cycle.
Yeah.
How many are going to get up tomorrow morning and go to work?
Not me.
Do you see any examples in there of linear time? There are several sentences, several phrases that say it. But of that day and hour, what day and hour? What day and hour is he talking about? That phrase specifically is not talking about the flood. He gives an example of the flood.
When Jesus comes.
When Jesus comes, exactly, that's not cyclical, is it? That's the end of it. I mean, towards the end of the rope, okay? If you would. I mean, he's been here before, yes. We want to argue it's cyclical that way. He will come again, yes. Okay? But we're headed towards that time. We believe that as Christians. Now that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, but my Father only. Tell me why you think God's the only one that knows. I don't know the answer to that, but tell me, somebody.
He was the one that created the earth, heavens and earth, so maybe he knows all of it, what's going to take place.
Somebody said his time isn't our time.
There you go. Do you think God knew when he created the earth when he would come again?
Yes.
Yes.
I know these are real relevant questions. You're relevant with it.
I don't think at that time, no, because he planned on everything. When he first created it, Adam and Eve, before they sinned, he planned on it going on forever. As soon as Adam and Eve sinned, then there was that started the end.
All right.
But don't you think?
I agree with you. But since God's all-knowing, did he not know they were going to sin?
Yes.
He
He
knows.
knows what's in
Then
it.
why did he create them in the first place if he knew that we were going to blow it?
I don't know if he really knew he was going to sin.
Well, he gave
He gives us a choice, saying he does us now.
He gives us a choice every day too, though, but he still knows, if we believe that he's all-knowing, then he knows what choice we will make. I always liken it to this, folks, and you can do what you want with it. I'm born and I have this choice or this choice. And God knows which one I'll make, but he doesn't force me to make it. Okay, then if I made that one, I have two more choices over here, and two more, and two more. You know, 8 billion people almost on this planet making 150,000 choices a day, and God knows every one of them.
Yes.
Woo-hoo! Isn't he awesome?
You know, it's kind of like transcendence. So
There it is.
you know, the problem I have, like, I'm not saying that's wrong, like the predestination and all that, but to think in your mind about that sometimes makes you almost like, well, there's nothing I can do about it anyway, because I'm just going to make the choices that I'm going to make, and I just don't think it works that way. You know, I think that God's all-knowing, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that, you know, we should have our mindset in a thing of, well, you know, whatever I do, it was good. It's all pre-planned anyway. You know, it's all cooked in. It's all cooked in. I think that's exactly the way we shouldn't think. I think we should think that, you know, there's a path for us and there's choices that we have. And I think God does give us choices to whatever we're going to make. He may know what choices we're going to make, but he gives us the free will to say, I'm going to choose God. I'm not going to choose the other.
Any other examples in that scripture of linear time? The whole last couple of verses. Watch, for you do not know what hour your Lord's coming, but know this, he's coming. You know, and we'll get into this later sessions stuff about, you know, what will happen, and Bill, you alluded to it last week even, what will happen to this planet someday, the millennial, and on and on and on. We're going to talk about all that stuff eventually. But there's coming a definite time when God's going to say enough, and he's coming after his church. And we'll talk about whether it's in the rapture or after the rapture, or the pre-trib or post-trib or mid-trib or whatever, okay? And we won't come to any conclusions that we don't know. You know?
Let me ask you something that you think God can change that, he can speed it up if he wants to.
And the prayers of people sometimes will help to change
If we believe that God is God, God can do anything He wants to do.
All this earth's got to do is
You have to go
a
back.
little bit faster.
Yeah. You think about that. We're on an axis. We're a little bit off. What would happen if we would just somehow tilt a little bit? Isn't that scary?
Back to the time of Sodom and Gomorrah too, because God was going to destroy everything there until the disciples went in and found some decent people, and they were allowed to continue before He destroyed them.
He's going to start all over again.
He changed it.
Some people in Washington are off their asses too.
I mean, he can change, I think sometimes he changes his mind, or, well,
All right, I'm going to throw that open, Roy. How many here believe God changes His mind?
Well, I've seen it in Scripture. I mean, you see it in Scripture where, they're plotting for the Sodom and Gomorrah, and He's like, okay, how about 10, how about 5, whatever. So there's Scriptures that show you that God relented, and He said, hey, okay, I won't do that.
If we don't believe God changes His mind, why do we pray?
That's right. And we ask for miracles.
Right.
And He sends them.
If you don't believe God changes His mind, then we would be fatalists, saying God's already set it in motion. We can't do nothing about it. Like you said a minute ago, Keith,
Yeah.
Well, I kind of don't disagree with your thing up there that God knows. He probably does know, but about which path you're going to take. He's so loving, I don't think He would let people be born, or like, that He knows that they're not going to follow Him and go to hell.
Is it possible that just in our daily lives, let's say parents and kids, I know which decision my kid's going to make. I hope they'll make this one, but I know they're going to make this one.
And a lot of times we're wrong.
Yeah? Is God ever wrong?
In His Scripture that He tells us that He has a path set out for us, and it's up to us to go through that path.
We can deviate from that path.
Yeah, that's right.
He doesn't make us puppets on a
We're
string.
not puppets,
Right.
that's
We have
right.
that choice.
That may seem like a small point, folks, but that's really how, determines how we live our lives. If we believe we're puppets on a string and God has a path for our life and stuff like that, then
I think God loved man so much when He when He was making man, that He said, I want him to be special. And so He gave us the privilege of being able to make up our own mind about things,
Sure.
make our own choices. And He more or less said, go ahead and make your choices. But God doesn't like some of the choices that we make. That doesn't make God like those. And
Remember-
He gives us a free will to do what we wanted to do.
Yeah, very good.
remember the title of this book, please.
And, we're getting close to it, I think.
And,
Yeah.
we can say that all we want, but remember, we know the end of the story.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
If you've read your Bible,
Yeah.
we might not understand every detail and agree on every detail of when, where, and how, and all that stuff, but we know where we're headed.
Well, like, in the beginning, this is something I thought about quite a bit. God made us in His own image. It says so right here.
Sure. Does that mean God looks like you?
Well, we could debate that, I mean. He made us in His own image. So, I think like fathers, we try to teach our children right. We do our best. We hope they make these right decisions and that, but sometimes they don't, so we have to punish them. The same with God. He hopes all humans are going to do right. They're going to make the right decisions, but they don't. There was one verse, I can't remember where it is, and I had it underlined in my Bible that if you're being punished, don't think that you're not saved because God disciplines his children.
In Hebrews. We're going to Hebrews, I think, but, just like the father punishes his discipline, the term is, use his children, yeah. Any other comments, folks? I'm going to let you go home. Next week, chapter 3, death stalks us all. Isn't that an interesting subject? Hang in there, okay? We're getting to the good stuff, okay? Remember what we talked about last week, where this is a two-phase thing. Not just end times of the world, but end times of who we are as a human being, okay? And whether you like it or not, we're all headed that way. We're all headed that way. We're all growing and getting old. Keith was just up in my office a little bit before church up there, and he saw pictures of Tracy and Diane when they went to that old. Oh, look at them! So we're headed that way. But God's in charge.
During the rapture, will we die
If we're still alive at the rapture,
Yeah.
we won't have to die.
Well, then we aren't all looking for death.
Yeah, there's a possibility.
But, actually he says that we're going to have a new body. So our old body might die, but our new body, we're going to have a perfect body. We ain't going to have the same body we have now.
If you've had two births, you only have one death. If you've only had one birth, you'll have two deaths. I preached about that last Sunday. Everybody here remembers.
The end time comes to each and every one of us when we pass away.
And that's why the emphasis of this book talking about death for a couple chapters, okay? Because it comes to us all, one way or another. So, God bless you all. Keith, why don't you dismiss us in a word of prayer?
I just want to thank you for this time together. We can fellowship, we can be here. Where a couple months ago we couldn't. And so thank you for this neat study about the end times. I think it's something we really need to look at because we are, I believe, living in those times. And Lord, we can never know that, and your word says. But Lord, I just thank you for this group. Thank you for a church. I thank you for pastor. And I thank you for the time that we have fellowship together. In Jesus' name, amen.
And if you need to, Keith happens to have a picture of that